All right, so we will get started now if you're ready, Cammy.
Sure.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for logging on and attending this evening's program. My name is Matt Schumann. I am on the programming team here at Kerry Library. Before we begin, there are just a few things to note. Please let me know if there are any technical issues that I can try to resolve. You can send those to me in the chat. You can also send any questions or comments through the Q&A button, and we will address those at the end. Please direct which poet you are addressing in any of those. If you are interested in purchasing any books from the poets, we will send out links for each of their books in a follow-up email. And we also have closed captioning enabled for tonight's event. If you do find it distracting, you can press the More button, or you may have live transcripts, as it's different on every Zoom platform, unfortunately, but there are a couple of ways to shut it off, and those should be one of them. This program was also made possible by the generous donors to the Kerry Library Foundation, and I'd like to now introduce Cami Thomas. She has published 2 books of poems, Cathedral of Wish and Inscriptions. Her 3rd book, Tremors, will be out in fall 2021. And all of these books are published by 4 Way Books. So she lives here in Lexington, and now please welcome Cammy.
Thank you very much, Matt. And in fact, I just want to say thank you to Kerry Library for being so accommodating about these readings. Christine Muir and that was Matt Schumann have just been terrific. So thanks. And also just thanks to everybody for coming. It's a wonderful thing. And I'm very appreciative in a dark winter night to have you all here. There will be 3 readers this evening. As you can probably see, I will do a brief introduction of each. And first, I'm going to introduce Moira Linehan. Moira Linehan's 3rd collection of poetry, Toward, was published in June 2020 by Slant Books. Southern Illinois University Press published her first 2, If No Moon and Incarnate Grace. Both those books were named honor books in poetry in the Massachusetts Book Awards. Her 4th book, And Company, was just published in December 2020 by Dos Madres Press. Linehan has been the recipient of many writing residencies, including ones at the Cill Rialaig Project, County Kerry, Ireland, the Tyrone Guthrie Centre, County Monaghan, Ireland, the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts in Amherst, Virginia, and the Whiteley Center in San Juan, Washington. She now resides in Reading, Massachusetts, after living for almost 40 years on Winter Pond in Winchester, Massachusetts. Moira.
Thank you, Cammy. Thank you for all the work you did to get us together, along with Christine. Thank you, Matt, for your support tonight. And I'm pleased to be able to thank in person Fred Marchant for the lovely words he said about this collection. So thank you, Fred. I'm going to bring you all to the far southwest corner of Ireland, to the Cill Rialaig Project. I'm going to have you out on cliffs, and we're going to be facing the North Atlantic. This poem is in 5 sections, and I will pause between each section.
Okay.
I will pause between each section. Each section is devoted to one of the vowel sounds in its long form. Entering the Cill Rialaig landscape, where cliffs face a bay, bathed in perpetual grave gray. Even on days with sun, rain clouds are always on the way. Always waves racing in fail to contain themselves. The weight of the North Atlantic presses them. Gales of wind push them to break against the base of the cliffs. But waves can't be destroyed, so they're raised as spray and raging foam. Way out on the wavering horizon, fog fades to mist. Mist pales to water-filled rays of light. Traces of the last storm's passage, the coming grace of sun. All the while, two men in a lone bobbing boat wait for fish in the midst of the bay. Sheep and cows graze along the tops of the cliffs. Wind rakes the ferns. Isn't it the sweep of it? Why I keep turning to keep it all in my head, the eternally seething sea between these cliffs of grieving wet stone, and the distant light-streaked line underneath the enormous domed clouds. Clouds that allow brief moments of sun and then release sheets of rain. Mist and fog in the sweep west to east, erasing the far hills and islands. Look again, they're re-emerging while the sea's suspended in each wave as it breathes in, gathers and heaves itself against the cliffs, erupting like fireworks into mist. And that's if there's only a breeze. When the wind picks up, it can beat so wildly, I can't even think. Yet sheep go on eating grass and weeds amidst their stone enclosures. I can see an oratory's ruins above me, an abbey's below. I'm so small here, I could evaporate into the weep of rain. Yes, it's how wide the sky is, how high it rises, the far horizon dividing earth from air, fine line at times, shining white light, at times impossible to define as rain clouds and rain and fog lie on top. High tide or low, there's never silence. Wild waves of wind, wild waves of sea hike themselves up the cliff's sides. Magpies find and fly the thermals. This site the pious sought. Their rocks remain, beehive huts, the outline of an oratory, inscribed stones still standing. Inside my cottage, the upper back wall's a skylight facing the side of a hillock. Birds fly in and out its rock clefts. A cow with lichen-colored haunches pauses on the high ridge. Here's where I've come to write. Oh, so much rain over the row of desolate stone cottages along the narrow road, oh, so close to the cliff's edge. The harrowing possible holds me back. Late October, the locals repeat winter's approaching. The long loneliness of cold, low clouds, blowing gales, evening's slow spread of shadows by 3 o'clock. Look, I chose to return, knowing it's not the cliff's edge I should fear. It's isolation no one survives. But I believe no soul does without some. That's the narrow road I walk. Off to the west, polar air collides with the warm Gulf Stream, so rain without end, but also rainbows with huge, distinct arches. Each of the three I've seen has had an echo, so double rainbows. The X on the new legend outside the ruins of the abbey documents "En soi à tout." You are here at the entrance into the sacred universe of ancient monks. Verses of psalms, their music against a backdrop of winds that fuel the fuming sea here at a bay's brutal edge. A rain-filled, seemingly useless life, ritual of manual labor, day after day, clearing rocks and roots in pursuit of the most elemental. Pared down plain chant, conduit to the beyond, or tribute to these numinous surroundings. For here, even rain can be translucent, as the few far shafts falling way out on the horizon now. This enclosure, a place they were not to leave, place of extreme beauty where their rules set them on a perpetual journey. X I am here at a measureless entrance in union with them. So what's my Irish heritage? The next poem, Genealogy, is based on work that I did research at the National Archives in Waltham, Massachusetts. And I was looking at the census data for the town where my father grew up, northeastern Massachusetts. My great-grandparents settled there, both my maternal and paternal great-grandparents. And this poem is in memory of my grandmother, Honora Buckley Linehan. Genealogy. July 19th, 1860, the census for Easton, Massachusetts. The fourth child of Daniel and Catherine Buckley, Honora, my grandmother, appears a month old. Add 4 boarders, John Hayden, Dan Reardon, Pat Connell, Ed Sweeney, all born in Ireland, all in their 20s. Laborers, says the record, Honora's father too. On that same day in the dwelling next door, 3 families, 13 names, the youngest, John Linehan, newborn son of Margaret and James. 1870, the Buckleys still have 4 boarders, though the names have changed and they're much younger. There's more detail of their work. Works on hinges, this census says, of Honora's father. Works on railroad of 3 of the boarders, while the 4th one farms. Home for Honora, where so many would come and go. Imagine the stories of longing she's hearing, all in a language with no word for emigrate. Exile, the closest they have. Each night at dinner, Honora coming through that swinging door, carrying bowls of potatoes boiled with cabbage, out from the kitchen into those stories about the land they'd left, the mothers. 1880, now Honora's father sells milk. 11 boarders work in the shovel shop, the stories now multiplied 3-fold. Now the Linehans own the place next door. James and his oldest, John, work in the hinge shop. I know what I want next, and there it is in the state archives. July 7th, 1885, Honora marries John, the boy next door, which is where I wish this story could pause, so my grandmother could speak, say what home meant when hers stood next door for the rest of her life. While inside she carried 25 years of exile, the longing of who knows how many for the ones they'd never see again. After hearing those stories, what mother would ever let go of her child? Or worse, ever let her child get too close? 1910, number of children born this mother, 10. Number of children living, 8. My father, now a name on the census. My father who grew up her youngest, though not her last. She died the summer before I was born. But hadn't I been there all along? For what story ever starts fresh and clean? Straight and clear, the path through the archives, back to Honora, and back to those boarders, the stories that exiled her, as she'd tell them again and again in the ways she did and did not hold my father. He held me. And so after looking at some of my family's genealogy, I started reading about the Great Irish Famine. There were several famines throughout the 1800s. The dates on the Great one, 1845 to about 1852. And I started to wonder, because I found out by further research that my maternal great-grandparents had arrived in this country in 1852. And my paternal grandfather came in 1858. I don't know about his wife. But that means if the Great Famine was 1845 to 1852, these people had survived that famine. And the question that I wish I could have answered is how? And this poem expresses that wish to know. From this distance, and this is set in the landscape at the Tyrone Guthrie Centre in County Monaghan, which is north of Dublin. It's just below the border to North Ireland. So it begins, rows a tractor cut into the hillside across the lake. From this distance, ridges of ribbing, the first rows of an Afghan, or shadows in the furrows, a washboard. From this distance across the lake, ridges cut into grassland too soggy to seed, a furrowed washboard of shadows, ghost lines, ditches where the famine dead lay, grass-stained mouths. Bogland, too soggy to seed, famine or not. Such hungers cycled back and back through this land. In the ditches, the dead with grass-stained mouths, while some shipped oats and corn to England. A hungers cycled back and back through my life, family dead on family dead, in grief, gnawed to bone. While some shipped corn and oats to England, how did my father's grandfather survive? Famine's bones, my family's buried bones, eat at the lines I can and cannot write. How could my great-grandfather have survived? And what's the hunger that now lives on in me? Surrounding the lines I do and do not write, ribbing, first rows of what may or may not comfort, the history of a hunger. From a distance, rows a tractor cut into a hillside. And so then my further question became, if these four people who survived the famine were living next door to each other the entire time my father was at least a child and growing up, how is it that he never once spoke to me about the famine? It was not one word. And this poem starts to work at getting an answer, although it too is a failure on that account. I'm back in the Cill Rialaig Project for this poem, out on the cliffs facing the North Atlantic, where there's a history of famine. They're always eating the grass. One or two look up startled when I walk near. They go on chewing. 4 o'clock one afternoon, I hear a herder whistle. His sheep come panting. What does he have that they want? Locals said it was coming. The hurricane off Bermuda turned this way. All week winds had moaned. Now screeching they huddle round the cauldron of this cottage. Through the night they howl. The surf's poundings drowned out. Next day, the winds come off the cliffs. They swell the waves, march them toward the West Cork hills. The waves spume white froth. Heavy, black-brimmed clouds follow after, in endless parade. I climb toward Land's End. Winds won't let me walk straight. The sky's clearing. I chance it. I've not yet walked down to the Abbey's ruins. Crows raise a ruckus, flush a feather-thin pheasant with its hurrying trail of tail. Only the well-fed could find meat on those bones. A famine's reach like this land, where the heavens lower their weight on dark clouds. The bay and rain blur, the horizon, a vast front for thousands of miles of sea, where those left built cairns at the backs of their mouths. So not every poem in this collection is set in Ireland. I'm going to read you one from Paris about a statue by Rodin, the sculptor and his muse. And one of the themes that's present throughout the collection, no matter the location, is the idea about leaving, the need to leave. the sculptor and his muse. She stands on one foot on his lap, balanced by one hand there too, her other leg and arm stretched out straight behind, that hand holding up its foot. Their hair so intertwined, it's clear she stood like this for some time. His two hands stone, one pressed against the wall behind him, the other covering his beard and mouth. He can't sculpt, can't speak, though he must yearn to, her mouth right by his ear. Viewed from the back, the muse could be getting inside his mind. Here in front, there's no such hint. At some point, she'll have to untangle herself, climb down from his lap and leave. There's no other way this sculptor can ever work again. This next poem, the math of it, is set halfway across the world in Friday Harbor at a residence that I had there at the Whiteley Center. And it's Friday Harbor on the San Juan Island off the coast of Seattle. And to get there from Seattle, I had to take a ferry. And off the ferry, from the ferry, I picked up a brochure that, like the census data gave me the basis for the poem about my genealogy. This one, there are data about the size of the boats, their construction, that becomes the basis for this poem. The math of it. What's the math that makes a ferry's wake mirror throat grooves on a whale, shallow, long striations across this inlet's silvered surface? That ferry, 440 feet in length, 3,250 tons. Ferry that can carry 200 cars, 2,000 travelers coming, going. What's the harbor's length and depth? The ferry's speed that a floating mass can be so balletic in its glide toward the dock. 20 minutes late this morning's 7:40. Only 2 weeks here and their winter schedule. Every 2 or so hours, one arrives, and within 30 minutes, it's backing out to reverse itself beyond this harbor, continue ferrying, has plied its cadence within my body, or more likely an expectation of cadence. Ferries coming, going. The equation of what opens with what closes. A freighted load, displaced water. The balance of what I carry. Harbors I must leave. And I'm going to close my reading with the title poem from this collection, Toward. And I'm back just below the border to Northern Ireland at the Tyrone Guthrie Centre in County Monaghan. Toward. And thank you all for being here. I walk a mile down the road to New Bliss, walk a mile away, walk the wooded path along the lake and out onto the lane, winding between muddy green hills. I'm nowhere but among mournful cows, their eyes bottomless wells that know a soul's dark nights. All their lives, cows stay put. 1 foot to the next, I keep moving, an endpoint always in mind. Village, next hillock, rounding the lake's loop. On I walk without being able to say why I must. The language here has been lost. Words like woods, cut down, hauled off, or abandoned. Yet something remains of those who spoke it, what has always been beyond words, even when they had their own. That's where I'm headed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Moira. That was wonderful. Really great. It's hard because we can't clap, but while I'm introducing each person, if you feel like, if you listeners feel like spontaneous moments of praise, please put them in the chat. And then maybe while people are actually reading their poems, we'll just let it be silent. But I think go ahead now and throw your praise in there, because it's very nice to hear back from people when you're reading. You know, it's one of the problems with this medium is you can't necessarily feel the room because there isn't a room. All right. Our next reader is Peter Schmitt. He's the author of 6 books of poems, including 4 full-length collections. Goodbye Apostrophe, published in 2020 by Regal House. Renewing the Vows from David Robert Books. Hazard Duty and Country Airport, both from Copper Beach. 2 chapbooks, To Disappear and Incident in an Apartment Complex, A Suite of Voices, were published by Pudding House Press. He has received the Julia Peterkin Award from Converse College, the Lavin Award from the Academy of American Poets, the Discovery the Nation Prize, 2 grants from the Florida Arts Council, and an Ingram Merrill Fellowship. His poems have appeared in many leading journals, including the Hudson Review, The Nation, the Paris Review, Poetry, and the Southern Review, are widely anthologized and have been featured on NPR's Writer's Almanac. He lives and teaches in his hometown of Miami, Florida, and can be reached through his website, peterschmidtpoet.com. Peter.
Thank you, Cami. Thank you, Matt. Thanks to Christine, everybody at Kerry Library who helped make this possible, this invitation. And thanks to everybody in attendance tonight. It's a delight to be here. It's a pleasure to be reading with Moira and Fred. I've been teaching on Zoom all day, and no doubt a number of you probably are teachers, professors, and you know well that some students make an indelible impression. Many don't, but some do. And this first poem is the opening poem in my new collection, which, as Cami says, called Goodbye Apostrophe from Regal House. And the poem is called The Sprinter. She ran track was all I knew, a sprinter. And wordless at the back seemed no more there than on days away traveling with the team. Her poems predictable, perfunctory, all false starts and pulling up too soon, never exceeding the line minimum, skinny on the page and always the single rush draft, as if writing were a race to finish as fast as she could. Subjects pedestrian, tedious, forgettable. For her, no doubt, as much as the reader. Until one day, late in the term, regionals looming, she dropped on my desk 3 solid pages of long, gripping lines, so much stronger than anything she turned in before, as though the language were compelled to rise to the occasion, and did, relaying with heart-stop clarity just what her father had been doing to her for the past 7 years, and how no one knew, not even her mother. What I can't tell you, of course, is that from that moment forward, her life changed. He met justice. She found freedom, not because it didn't happen, but because it wasn't for me to know, and I didn't. And her writing the rest of that semester, as you'd expect, never as expressive again, nothing else summoning that force. But the poem had opened something in her as she passed it to a coach who notified counselors, and she kept on competing, battling, which is how I'll think of her, springing away from her blocks, arms and legs churning, the head down, then slowly coming up, as she'd been taught. The collection Goodbye Apostrophe is dedicated to my mother. And this next poem, which is called Fortune, seems in some ways to me central to the collection in a number of ways. And when I think about it in certain respects, pretty central to my life, actually, as well, as possibly you'll see. This is again called Fortune. About her brief, childless, dark first marriage to a man with a family fortune. My mother always kept very quiet. All I knew was that it ended in his threat to hurl acid in her flawless face. Her friends hustling her out of town early one morning. No glance back, no contesting the estate. How she fled to Florida to start again. It seemed a long way from the life she shared for nearly 40 years with my father. And I was long grown when my mother heard that he had settled just a few miles from us, the first husband, in retirement, maybe. But more years passed, my father passed away, and the ex stayed silent. Until one day word arrived that he too had died, alone, on a houseboat moored on the Intracoastal, the body not found for almost a week. And only then did my mother disclose other threats made at the time, how he vowed to track her down. Before the internet, all you needed was money, and to kill any children she had. It shadowed her over the years at the mind's edge, waiting. And she could never have told my brother and me. Eventually, it would have grown familiar, less insistent, less probable, if never quite erased. For my mother, hearing of his death must have been like a rope loosening, a boat drifting slowly to sea. Here's a short poem, also about my mother. This is called Walking with My Mother. For years, with my long strides, I hurried ahead of her into stores, the bank, supermarket, movie theaters. By the time she needed a cane and an arm, I had learned to slow my pace to hers. She might have leaned on a walker or yielded to a wheelchair. Instead, I became like a father of a bride, handing her off that day with her shy smile to the dark-suited groom at the end of the aisle. Here's the title poem of the new book. And I'll make a brief remark after the poem. It's called Goodbye Apostrophe. Goodbye Apostrophe. You are barely hanging on at the top of the line by one curled fingertip. Now it appears you've fallen from the keypads of all the smartest phones. Forgive my possessiveness toward you. Goodbye turn signal, hiding behind the steering wheel. Whatever indestructible composite you're made of, no one in this town seems to need you anymore. I don't know which way to go without you. Goodbye, incandescent light bulb. You took up all my energy, but these sinuous newcomers lack your warmth, your hominess. When the rare idea comes to me now, what flashes on above my head? Goodbye, Mom. When I went to pick up your ashes today, a squirrel darted beneath my car, then came out the other side, unscathed, as if there weren't room in the world for one more death, however small. My light, my direction, mine. Goodbye. In a couple of weeks or so after my mom's passing, I was scribbling down these little tributes to these various things, disappearing punctuation, the absence of courtesy in traffic, at least as practiced down here. Changing light bulbs. New light bulbs coming in. And it took me a while to realize that what I was really doing was I was writing about my mother. It took a while for me to actually realize that, and then once I made that connection, then the poem came together, and I realized that this was actually an elegy. But sometimes there's a delayed reaction like that. At least with me there is. Here's one more poem about my mom, and then I'll read a few other things. This is called The Little Blue Purse. It was a little blue purse she had asked for, my mother, age 4, when her father called from the Mayo Clinic with a silver chain, and he had somehow found one in a pawn shop in Rochester. And if he weren't so tired from the radium and the transfusions, from the talk of white blood cells, from the drive itself, that he might have noticed sooner that he'd left the purse at a small motel near the Canadian border. And so, with his family waiting for him, wife and 3 daughters, my mother the youngest, at the lake at Winnipeg Beach that summer, he turned back, though it would mean many more hours. She was kept, my mother, from his funeral, and her own mother allowed no photograph of him in the house. But my mother kept the little blue purse in a trunk she carried into adulthood, with books and letters and clothes from her early years. And the trunk, too big for my parents' first apartment, was stored at my father's plant, where someone stole it. And the only thing my mother said she missed was the little blue purse, almost all of which had slipped from my mind out walking on the afternoon of her death, her body bagged and crematorium bound just hours before. And I had gone 100 yards more before realizing what I had just passed, sitting on a limestone wall at eye level. A purse that someone had discarded or lost, for all the world a child's purse, cheap, plastic, and a light blue. When we were kids, we would swear on our mother's lives. What do I swear on now? But when I came around again, the purse was gone, the sky just turning from clear to dusk. Yeah, my mother used to complain for the longest time that I never wrote about her. You've got poems about your brother, you've got poems about your father, you've got poems about everybody except me. And I would try to explain to her, well, Mom, if I'm writing about you, it's probably emerging from some kind of conflict, or I'm probably going to be writing an elegy about you. And that was never really enough for her. That was never a satisfactory explanation. And I imagine that wherever she is right now, she's probably saying something like, you could have still written some of those poems while I was alive. Well, now I have a book with quite a number of poems about my mom. Here's something a little bit different. This is a poem, I guess when I look at this poem, for me, this is a poem about, I guess, priorities, or at least as I see them. It's also, for whatever it's worth, it's in rhyming tercets. The poem is called Missionary. Before my next door neighbor left for Yemen to bring Christianity to the Muslims, she bought a gorgeous snowy Himalayan because she wanted some companionship and doubted her old cat would survive the trip. She hoped to find someone willing to adopt the 15-year-old Tabby who'd been with her through everything, through the bitter divorce, kids growing up and away, that time her car burned on the expressway. Behind the screen door, the old cat glared as my tireless neighbor dragged the upstart in a training halter around and around the courtyard. The youngster bug-eyed and gasped from straining at the collar. And while the stack of boxes grew taller and my neighbor was learning Arabic, the aging Tabby, who'd endured arthritic and asthmatic for years, suddenly fell sick with a spreading fungus and was quarantined in the bathroom. With her house in order, or at least her apartment in storage, my neighbor asked if I would take her poor girl to the vet and put her down. It would hurt her too much. I'll go with you, I said, not the words she wanted to hear. Next day, one last hello at my door. I'm off to the land of Allah, she said. Wish me luck, and God keep you always. And I'll close with this poem called History. And again, my thanks to the Kerry Library and everyone who did such a great job in putting this together. And again, my thanks to Moira and Fred. This is a poem called History. On a walking tour of historic homes in my old neighborhood, we enter a house that slowly dawns on me as belonging to the family of a girl I knew in junior high. Good looking, intelligent, vivacious, and popular, and who died suddenly, not much after, in college, of a heart condition never diagnosed. She was editor of our 9th grade yearbook, so it's no surprise she's everywhere in it. And in my copy, she signed each photo, crossing out in one her face and writing, "I hate this picture." That year, she dated a Black classmate, when at the time, not one Black family lived anywhere in our town. And now I am walking through her old house, which I had never visited back then, just a boy from school, and into her bedroom, which her parents have evidently left as she might have last seen it. The lone twin bed, the Frampton posters, cramped desk, box turntable. Our guide is pointing something out, but I'm not listening. For just now, I am closer to her than I ever was, and am learning another kind of history of this house. Downstairs again, I introduce myself to her mother, who has been patiently waiting with a pitcher of lemonade for us to file through. She smiles and claims to remember my name. Next to the door hangs a large family photo with Beth standing front and center, her gaze directed just above the camera, taken likely not long before she died. I pause there briefly, and we resume our leisurely tour as our guide draws a line across his list of houses. Thank you again very much.
I hope you can hear me. I just got kicked out and came back in. Peter, can you raise your hand if you can hear me?
We can hear you, Cammy. I'm not sure what
Okay.
just happened. Yeah, I
Thank
got you spotlit now.
No worries. All right. Thank you so much, Peter. I think your mom would be proud. So we're going to come now to our third reader this evening. Thank you all for being here again. And there will be a short Q&A after. If people have questions for the individual poets, you can put them in the chat. Fred Marchant's most recent collection of poetry, Said Not Said, was published by Grey Wolf Press in 2017 and was named an honored book by the Massachusetts Book Awards. Marchant's first book, Tipping Point, won the 1993 Washington Prize and was reissued in a 20th anniversary second edition. His other books include Full Moon Boat, published by Grey Wolf, House on Water, House in Air from Daedalus Press in Dublin, and The Looking Glass, The Looking House, again from Grey Wolf. He's also a co-translator with Nguyen Ba Chon of collections by several contemporary Vietnamese poets and is the editor of Another World Instead, the early poems of William Stafford. Winner of the May Sarton Award from the New England Poetry Club, he's an emeritus professor of English at Suffolk University in Boston. Fred.
Thank you. Thank you, Cammy. Thank you, Kerry Library, Christine, Matt, and thank you all for coming. It's so great to hear the work of Moira and Peter. I felt like I was walking with both of them, with Moira on those high cliffs in Ireland and with Peter walking those long strides with his mother. I'm going to begin with a poem that is set in a town called Solesmes in France. It's in Solesmes, there's a Benedictine monastery that's world-renowned for its Gregorian chant. I first learned about it when I was an undergraduate at Brown University, and my teacher then, George Morgan, brought some recordings from the monks at Solesmes to our interdisciplinary class on the human condition. I thought of those monks last spring, and so I'll read the poem now. Solesmes. Time for a cardinal to perch in our locust and sing the evening song. The neighbor's bronze-hued cat peeks around the corner, wonders what I am and what I would do if it dare to place the next paw down. The slanting spring sunlight has reached every corner of my yard, and the green feeling of all that returns brings me back to a dawn mass in the chapel of the abbey. The morning prayers curling like incense as they rise toward heaven, and a deity the monks believe cannot help but listen. And remembering their song in these, the first weeks of our affliction, I do too. And of course, these have been weeks and now years of our affliction. And the affliction has been not just the pandemic, but the past 4 or 5 years in our national political life. And so that poem reminded me of this poem. This poem is called How the Words Died. How the Words Died. Without heroism, the guards falling asleep, a blood sky down, a storm of falsehoods blowing in, thick gray vortices, layered walls of unmeaning, long clawed lightning strikes. The words grew terrified, were clinging to a tree, wind lifted, tossed up, cast into the air, toyed with. An imperial death watch with many twisting turns until the words grew weary and gave up. How each word fell one by one. How in their dying tongues they tried to name all the quaint villages they had first come from. If that poem is a bit harsh, this poem is a little bit more resilient. It's a poem that has some music in it from Vietnam. It's called the Dan Bao, and the Dan Bao is a monochord zither. It's a wire that stretched and played. It sounds a little bit like an electric guitar whammy bar. In any case, it's a very ancient instrument. And well, this is the Dan Bao. And it's for my friend Kevin Bowen, a person who for many years directed the Joiner Center at UMass Boston for the study of war and social consequences, and without whom I would not have had 25 years of friendship with Vietnamese writers in Vietnam itself. The Dan Bao. 1,000-year wood, a wire stretched up to a thumb bar to tighten and shape sounds the instrument hides inside a note that trembles like a shimmer of heat or flows like a prayer rising from the precise place where a long ivory pick turns the wire into time and turns each second into a life both leaving and being born. A note that brims so with feeling, mist on the mountains and rivers seems to mouth the lyrics of a love song. I am here, still here, with you, despite everything. I so enjoy the wilds of Ireland. This is a poem set actually in Kevin Bowen's cottage in Echo Island in County Mayo in Ireland, which I visited more than once. And it's called Report from a Cottage. I sat in the sunset at the edge of yard, the bog fuchsia cut back, so I could see the fields and the mountain pasture dotted with sheep, those bleating tatters of wool. When out of the field there came to me more than that aged, dignified ram with a blue branding stain on its back, more than the heavy wet wool trailing underneath, more than the cud-chewing stare that tells you how to be in the moment, how much confidence to have in the movement of sun and clouds, the sway of the stars, and how the barbed wire of the field means nothing really, that we and they have within us all we would ever need. And if I was dazzled by the strangeness of this claim, it was I who should come in under the thorny bush and sleep there with them in the warmth of their gathering. I knew I was only imagining this, but I only wished the animal could teach me so much, so well. But knowledge neither consoled nor stopped me from weeping. Many miles down inside, where I was on all fours, a sheep at the foot of a mountain I have no name for, yet knew I was a part of, and yet a part of me as long as I breathed. Well, you can sense that the last word in that poem, leads us into the affliction again. This poem is called What the Lungs Had to Say. Our losses were immense, encroachments continuing without cease, each day, in the eyes of all around us, the look of resignation and the fear you see in calves when they're hustled into the frame that steadies their heads until, after an initial struggle, they calm down. No need for a ruckus, or waste what energy is left while the tissue of our being hardens and the air grows ever scarcer. And night, when it comes, blesses us with nothing to distract us or otherwise get in the way of our taking in the little left of the nothing we could say. This is called the call button. We all know what those are, I hope. The call button. A mid-spring freeze, leaves giving up, it all came too early. Skinny saplings still trying to find a way to the sun. Branches so needy, they sway on every wind breath. A sound to my ears as consoling as a night nurse who tells me I have done what I needed to do, that I have loved and been loved in return. As if words and winds will care for me now. As if the lilac could hear what she said and remember what it felt like to send forth a scent lasting only a day, leaving its flowers to shrivel, as if making myself smaller would save me, as if listening to sleet ticking as it landed might mean something more than the button I press and press harder, this little red plastic, miserably misnamed thing. The call. The great cruelties, as we all know, of the pandemic has been those who died alone or with people who were medically caring for them as their companions in their last moments. And it put me back in mind of when my own mother died, that there was at least the possibility, and in this case, the reality of a vigil. So this is called the privilege of the vigil. Over at last and gone. The body that was belongs now to no one. Palpable absence, unequivocally arrived. The sheer lack of ambiguity in the moment takes your breath away. You feel almost grateful for what loss might be able to teach you, handing you over, hostage to this regime ruled by the lords of the real. You sit and marvel at how quickly you feel a keen admiration for the literal, and how metaphors make you smile as they sneak into your thoughts and seem almost calculated posture when compared to the dim warmth in the hand you still hold until you place it down gently, thinking how gently does not matter anymore. And you note the bed rail, the proud embossed medallion. You note the fluorescent light that shines upon it, and the face that has begun to look like a mask. You think, you imagine, you wish that before the soul floats up and out, it will hover at the sealed window. You hope it wants to touch you once before leaving the airless room where kindness invited you in and asked you if you'd like to have a few moments alone. Some of you know what this musical notation symbol is. It's the symbol for a coda, and it's in the second to last page of my book. The last book, Said Not Said, this one, and it comes after all of the poems, so to speak. The major poems, the arc of the book itself are over, but there was a coda, and I don't know exactly why I was really interested in having a coda to the book. And but I read it to you because it is a poem that stands alone. Then I'll say a word about it and where it might be pointing. So Said Not Said is this book, and it has its themes and subject matter. And then at the end, you turn the page after the coda and you hear this. Shade laurel, scent of sage and thyme, a brown goat that turns back to stare. What took you so long? I can even hold up the page a little bit and you can see how it's sort of scattered on the page. And honestly, I don't know what that poem means. I know what the origins of it was, that my wife and I had climbed a mountain in Greece some years ago. There were some goats at the top. And one looked back and I thought it might have been saying, what took you so long to climb? But then over the years, that moment became metaphorized and started to, first of all, I thought maybe it's a part of myself saying, what took you so long? The goat part of myself saying, what took you so long to get to these poems? And then I started to think even grander notions. I thought, maybe this is God saying, what took you so long to get up here toward closer to heaven? And so, I've been very happy to have that coda there at the end. And then in the past few months, some strange things have happened. I started hearing voices, good ones, not a psychotic break, but just some voices like that one. I didn't know where that voice came from, and now I was hearing some other voices. The voices that this was pointing at, I think, this was a kind of hint as to what I might do in my next poems, had something to do with that moment when the cardinal sang in the backyard that I began this reading with. I'm sitting in the same spot on the back porch in November, in a very cold, rainy night, and I was just cooling off, basically. And there's a small light on the back porch, and I thought, just for a second, I thought I saw my sister peek around the corner. My sister is deceased since 2009. She had a difficult life. She early childhood, not early adulthood, developed schizophrenia and in and out of hospitals. And most of the last half of her life was spent in the Rhode Island State Mental Hospital. And she was a painter and she loved jazz, even use the present tense. She loved jazz music. And I admired her. She was 14 years older than me and I admired her tremendously. And I thought, and she's always had some poems devoted to her in my books. And I thought after Said Not Said, I had ended that part of my work. And there she was suddenly appearing in the dark saying, not yet. And all of a sudden I started to think, yeah, it's true. I'd written about her, but I hadn't written from within a voice like hers and pieces of her dialogue. And I started to think too that, I'm going to start to develop a character, partly her, partly me, partly invented. And out of the blue, I thought, a name came to me. The name was Stranger Right. You see that? It's R-I-G-H-T, Stranger Right. And Stranger Right suddenly became the voice, the name of the voice, a voice I don't know who this person is. I do know that I have some poems now that are set in that institution where my sister spent so much of her life. I'll read you 3 of them. This is Stranger Right, Nocturne. The world, what little I see of it, pressed first its cheek, then its lips against my window. Thank you, I said to the world. Thank you for the bliss of night that comes to visit every day. Thank you for the trees that do not sleep and their roots that reach in under the building and seem to me to climb sometimes up the stairs, slip in under the door, looking for me. Thank you, wind, for bending the trees, pulling at the leaves to help me remember the long waves, the curling heave and tug of tides, the pulse as predictable as mine. Thank you, temple vein. Thank you, heart and brain, for being still of this world, even if, my friends, you are no longer of it. Stranger Right. He's not always in a good mood. I'm going to point that out and warn you in advance. Stranger Right, in Ars Poetica. That sweetheart yields this one, Stranger Ride, and Ars Poetica. I don't do ventriloquism, and I don't believe in the persona poem. I hate to see poets in costumes. I will not read a script on how I'm supposed to feel. I will not worry about tenses or history. I may need to invent my own language. I will not be living on Joy Street or here in the Nut House, or maybe I'll be in both at the same time. I might be a first person or a second or a third. I can't say. They tell me that's a problem. I say it all depends on who is out there, who is coming to call on Stranger Ride, who is knocking on my door. Who are you? Who do you think you are? Who the fuck are you to ask me if I'm in here or out there or anywhere? Organic remains. Oye, oye. On the way to my session.
Yeah, we'll still hope Fred can come back for the end of this
Um,
meeting.
Carolyn Fleiss, you have your hand raised. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to allow you to unmute you 1 second. Or now, okay, there you are. All right, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and talk.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good. Moira, I just wanted to say to you that I have read your newest book, And Company, and I love it. And so that was really what motivated me to come to this, so that I could hear some of your other work also. And I was wondering if there would be an opportunity for you to be talking about that book at some point in the near future.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the comments about And Company and for asking about the future. I don't have anything scheduled right now, but you can, if you want to contact me through my website, moiralinehan.com, I can then make a note to myself to let you know if and when I next read from And Company.
That would be lovely.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right, look forward to hearing from you.
Does anyone else have a question?
There's a question in the Q&A for Moira. They're wondering if any of your poems were formal.
If any of my poems were
Formal.
not strictly, but there are things that I try to do with them. For instance, the poem that I wrote where there's a history of famine, I have a syllabic structure that I try to follow in each stanza in that poem. I'm working there with, in a sense, you can't just walk freely and anywhere when you're walking on cliffs. And so the lines are all end stop. There's 30 lines in that poem. 26 of them are end stop. And so I'm trying to create the feeling of being out on those cliffs. But, am I strictly writing in form? No.
I would ask Peter the same question, whether you wanted to say anything about form.
Well, there was that one poem, the missionary poem, that is in rhyming tercets, and like Moira, the majority of the poems that I read tonight are in syllabic, also syllabic form. I do a lot in syllabics,
And actually, can you just briefly say what that is for people who don't know?
Well, sure. Yeah, it's simply a system of counting syllables per line, and there's all kinds of approaches you can take. You can either select a number of syllables and stick with it in every line of the poem, or you could, if you had let's say you had a 3-line stanza, you might you might number the syllables something like 585, 585, 585. I mean, it's, whatever you would choose, but it offers you a kind of compromise maybe between free verse, where pretty much anything goes, and the tighter demands of meter, and more formal kinds of arrangements. So it gives me a little bit of structure that I like. I like pushing against that. And
Great.
so, yeah.
Thank you. Fred, you're back. You're muted. You're muted. So,
I'm back.
oh, I'm so thrilled. We're thrilled. And why don't we come back for your,
I think it was because I was swearing,
that's what we thought.
right?
You should look at the chat. There are some funny comments in there.
Actually, I lost all the chat because I had to go back. I went
Oh,
back to the
right.
original.
I'll save it for
All right.
Oh, yeah,
everybody
save
so
it.
they
Yeah,
can-
'cause it's
That would
heavy.
be great.
Okay.
Well, I don't know where I went stone cold. When did that happen?
I think you were
remember
was he in the second poem of the three that you said you were going to read there?
Yeah. Had I started to swear yet?
You'd sworn
yes.
and then
Oh, good. That's good.
Yeah.
That was the end of that poem. All right.
Okay.
Anyway, those were three little glimpses of Stranger Right. I wanted to end actually on this poem, and it's a poem that has sort of accompanied me throughout the entire Trump era. And in the beginning, it was a good reminder of something. And then as the years wore on, these many years, these 4 years have wore on, it's become even more sort of apt. And now that he's gone, it's more apt than ever. So I'm going to read it, and I'll end on that. And thank you all for letting me go out and take a walk and come back. Or this is called the Cairn by the Cabin. Some of you have been out to Walton Pond and know that where Thoreau's original cabin was, that platform, people want to memorialize their visit, and they put a little stone onto a cairn, and there are 2 or 3 cairns nearby. And so this is a cairn by the cabin at Walton Pond. The asphalt parking lot, our summer high thick heat, and children with towels, flip-flops, popsicle rockets, red, white, and blue ice. How deep the hole our country did fall into while we slept, and how the dream brought us locusts, their wine the sound of someone strapped to the table, cut open for the hoses, and the salt. Impossible to say where we stand now on a path that circles what HDT said was the eye of God, but now feels like a corner where a sparrow has fallen from its nest and is looking up at us, as bewildered as we are. Well, down in the mud, leafy pools, shallows, deep within our alluvial history, the truths are unfolding beneath us. So we wanted to find out if there was, after all, some granite there, something we believed in that held us together. He must have known it was always tentative, ready to fall apart, that we each would have to believe enough to build it over again, and that this is what these stones are here for. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Fred. Thank you. And thanks to everybody,
welcome.
all of our readers. We were doing a little bit of question and stuff before,
Good.
and maybe we'd just do a little bit more of that if anybody would like to ask anything. I'm so appreciative of everybody being here and with us for this wonderful reading. I feel like there are a lot of genealogical interests here throughout that were very moving for me. So anybody have final questions for any of our readers tonight?
If not, there are also an abundant array of compliments for each poet in the
Yeah.
chat. So I'll be sure to send those to each of you.
Yeah, I hope everybody's been looking at the chat. It's wonderful. All right, well, great job all around. Thank you all so much. I'm glad we hung in there for you, Fred. A couple of people said that they wanted to hear one of them again, and hopefully they will be able to find those and read them some more. So with that, Matt, is there anything else from the library? Do you want to close us out?
All I will say is this is recorded and will be on our YouTube page, so you can watch it anytime afterwards. Thank you, Cami, for putting together yet another wonderful night of poetry. And thank you to all three of the poets for reading your wonderful poetry. Truly moving. But thank you also to everyone for attending.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Cammy. Thank you, Matt. Thanks, Maura and Fred.
Thanks,
Nice to meet
everybody.
you, Peter.
Kenny,
And
Maura.
thank you again,
All right.
Fred.
We'll
and
see
Cammy,
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
See you
Have
soon.
a good night.
Good
Bye.
night now.